Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled today are Lisa Firestone and musician Rocky Dawuni. Author-psychologist Lisa Firestone was born and raised in Los Angeles. She graduated from UCLA and took classes at Loyola Marymount. Lisa's on the faculty of UC Santa Barbara Graduate School of Education. She's been in practice for many years, treating couples and individuals with intimacy issues. Lisa's written books, produced videos, and she's been involved in clinical training and applied research. What do those last terms mean, applied research and clinical training?
Applied research means doing research that really is relevant to people. So we've done research on suicide risk assessment, for instance, that's very useful for clinicians to really identify who's at risk and also to understand what's going on in the mind of somebody who's in a self-destructive state.
So you do that research and then share it with?
Yes,
see.
we do.
So that's a clinical part of it.
Right. And that's how that's an application of the research. We like to do research that's actually useful for
I
something.
see. Oh, I see.
And clinical training really has to do with teaching professionals. So for instance, if you have somebody who's at risk for suicide, you want them not only to get help, but to get good help when they get that help.
Where did you go to school?
I went to graduate school at California School of Professional Psychology. Before that, I was at UCLA.
So you knew that you were going to go into this field. How did you choose it?
Well, my father's a clinical psychologist.
Oh.
So early on, I got interested in what does it mean to be a psychologist and tried to understand that and listened to his conversations with colleagues about ideas. And so I was very drawn to the field from an early age.
Oh, you were? So you really focused in on it. Have you worked with your father?
I have. We have worked together on writing books and articles, and he is a consultant to the Glendon Association, a nonprofit where I work, and he's our main theoretician.
And what's his name?
Robert Firestone.
And theoretician?
Yeah, theoretician. He came up with a theory that really kind of drives our work in terms of understanding what goes on in human beings, what kinds of things really influence how a person's life is going to be, starting with the psychological pain that we experience early in life, and then really that getting really compounded by the existential issues when we learn about death.
So do you see him every day?
Oh, yes, I do.
Oh, you do?
Usually.
What?
He travels quite a bit, so I don't always see him every day.
Does he lecture?
No, he doesn't. But our family does a lot of sailing and adventuring, and and while he's doing that, he also keeps writing, and he's also an artist, so he keeps working on his artwork as well.
Well, you mentioned the Glendon Associates and being a nonprofit group. What do they actually do?
Well, we do research, education, and training, and
just what we've been talking about.
What we've been talking about, and they do it all in the interest of understanding what's going on in people that drives them to be self-destructive and how to prevent it. So we really see our mission as saving lives and helping people live more meaningful lives.
How do people come to you? Are they referred by doctors or?
In my clinical practice, sometimes they're referred by other psychologists or doctors or relatives or friends who've had experience with me.
You've written several books. You've written Creating a Life of Meaning, Compassion, The Wisdom of Psychotherapy. Was that one of the first ones?
That was one of the first books that I worked on directly, and with my father and with Joyce Catlett as well, who's our co-author and was co-author with my dad on a lot of his books.
What does that handle? Because you also have fear of intimacy, and sex and love. So let's talk about what these three books focus on. And none of them are on suicide, are they?
No, we also have a book on suicide.
Oh, you do? Oh, you do have a book. Okay, let's talk about fear. Let's talk about fear of intimacy first.
Okay, fear of intimacy really looks at what keeps people from developing close, intimate relationships, and it looks at how people tend to form something called a fantasy bond or an illusion of connection. That when they do, they have the fantasy of being in love, but the real behavioral operations of love, like treating each other kindly, tend to drop out of the relationship.
Do they recognize that?
Well, if they recognize it, then they can really start to change it. It's not that once that's formed, your relationship is hopeless. The whole idea is to recognize it, to look at the ways you've tried to become like a merged in, identity.
Well, then how can you recognize it, and how can you solve the problems of having that fear?
The first thing in recognizing is look at ways that your relationship has fallen into routines in ways that you see your partner kind of as your right arm, with no more attraction than you have to your right arm, and you don't afford them maybe any more respect than you do your right arm.
Ah.
The way you feel like, but if they left, you feel like you would fall apart or die or couldn't survive without them. So if you see some of those kinds of signs, maybe the relationship is kind of polarized, where one person's very parental and the other person acts very childish. You have to start to break those patterns and actually start to try to relate to each other as two separate human beings again.
I know, but those are the kind of things that bring you together, really. You depend on your mate for those kind of things, or your relationships.
It's okay to have things that you depend on, or that are needs that you let your mate feel for you, but it's very different than merging your identity and having a fantasy of being one whole person together. You really are two separate people, and to keep the attraction alive and the sexuality alive, it really is important to remain two separate people.
So another thing that you talk about is conquering your inner voices. And what is that actually?
Okay. Well, critical inner voices are those negative thoughts that we have about ourselves, about our partner potentially, about relationships. Maybe they come up in the work arena for some people, that really do keep us from pursuing the things that really would matter to us in life. And they're also, negative thoughts are really what direct self-destructive behaviors. Listening to those negative thoughts, we act in ways that are against our own self-interest.
In your own mind, not negative thoughts that people are saying or telling you.
No, but sometimes we do provoke our partner to say to us the negative thoughts we have toward ourselves, because then we can sort of feel like we're fighting it out with them. And often when people break up, in a way, that's what's so painful. They have to take back all those projections and realize they feel that way about themselves. It isn't the partner that's the problem.
They don't realize it at the time when they have this, what is it, fear of inner voices? I mean, critical inner voices?
Well, I think some people are aware of their critical inner voices to some extent.
Well, a lot of people go, I'm too fat. I don't look at my hair isn't good. I'm too, yeah, those kind of things we do all the time.
Right, and those we're aware of. But I think what we're unaware of a lot of the time is how much they direct our behavior. That based on that thought that we're too fat, we don't get dressed up nicely, we don't think that this person's going to be attracted to us, we don't even take a chance.
That's so true, because it leads you down a bad path. I mean, you lead yourself down the path by saying those things. And,
yes.
And I don't think we're ever aware of that, are we?
Right, and I think
or
in
it's an
recognizing
excuse?
them, well, I think recognizing them actually helps you start to change your path. First of all, to realize that when you're having those negative thoughts, you're attacking yourself. You are not in a friendly state toward yourself. And that there really is almost like an enemy that lives inside of you.
That's very interesting.
This kind of free-floating malice that we attach to our weight or our appearance or our intelligence or all kinds of things.
But that's also lack of confidence.
It is. And starting to challenge it, though, and to take the behaviors, to act in our own self-interest. So even though we think we're not attractive enough to ask that person out, or to at least talk to that person,
right?
That we have never even approached, maybe, is really important. So it's really in a way like kind of broadening your horizons or expanding your boundaries, because we have a lot of self-imposed limitations that we put on ourselves.
The suicide issue. You have people who come to you who are suicidal, I suppose. Is that the idea? You don't go out to the police and help them with suicide people who are ready to jump off a bridge or going to drive their car?
I do training for the police, and I do training.
Oh, you do?
I do training for crisis line workers who answer, phone calls of people who are suicidal.
But I wondered if you did that, because you're since you are an expert in that field, or you teach that field.
Yeah, I do those things as well, but I also have dealt with clients that are very suicidal. And, talk about these self-destructive thoughts. This is the extreme end of it.
Oh, I was just going to say, everything you've talked about so far has all fit in together, hasn't it?
It really has. And the overarching theoretical approach behind it that my father's developed is called separation theory. And it's separating on two levels. One is separating from very destructive ties or fantasy bonds or illusions of connection that we formed. But the second is separating from these negative thought processes, realizing that negative thought that you're fat or that you're ugly or that you're stupid isn't really you. That's an enemy that lives inside of you.
That's a great way to look at it. And the last book, Sex and Love, and there are so many things about intimate relationships in here, about how should we divulge our flaws. I think I remember reading that.
Right. How can we be honest with our partner? And that is really important. And to really be honest in a relationship, you have to know yourself first. That's the difficult part.
But that's showing your flaws, though, in a way. Do you want to do that? And earlier you talked about being individual people, but good partners, you also say, act off of each other.
You do, and hopefully that builds. You know, it's like a small act of kindness from you then elicits kindness from your partner, and that can build. That's fine, but you're two still separate individuals, and I think it's important to be honest in relationships. Not everybody thinks that, and I'm aware of that, but I think it's incredibly important. I think it's incredibly difficult too.
Should they talk about sex?
I think that people should talk about sex. We have a brochure that we have on how to be a better lover in terms of the emotional aspects of love, and one is to talk about sex with your partner. You don't have to necessarily do it in the situation, which is probably the hardest.
Yes.
You know, most people maybe talk to their friends about it. They don't necessarily talk to their partner. What do you like? What makes you feel good? What do you want from the other person? Communicating on that level does bring people much closer.
But it's also emotional too. I mean, it doesn't have to be the sex act as far as sex,
right.
Emotion.
Right. And that's actually what in the book what we're talking about. It isn't methods of how to have sex or make your sex life better by technique. It's how to have that emotional intimacy and combine that with sexuality. The thing most people say they want is actually the hardest thing to do. Because I think that when we're really emotionally close and that combine that with sexuality, that we feel a lot of pain and sadness at the idea of losing the other person, of losing ourselves.
You're afraid to.
So it tends to bring up a lot of existential issues for people when there really is that intimacy.
I think one of the things you also say is don't be rigid.
Don't be rigid, be flexible, be open to new experiences, take chances, take risks. Because when we're really rigid, we really limit our life. It's like we're putting boundaries there that don't really exist. And we never really get to know ourselves. And if we are willing to explore, take chances, I ended up climbing Mount Kilimanjaro last year, something I never would have imagined I would do.
And that was taking a risk?
Absolutely.
Ooh, how far did you go?
We went all the way to the top.
Did
All
you?
13 in our group made it, so it was really quite an adventure.
What general advice would you give before you left, just for a good relationship, whether it be with a husband, a father, a friend?
I do think being honest and being open in your relationship and shared experiences. Relationships just don't exist in a vacuum. It's really important to have something to share.
You mean like going out?
It could be going out. It could be preparing to climb a mountain. It could be writing a book together. It could be taking a sailing adventure together. It could be a lot of activities. Whatever kinds of things light you up, but finding some of those things that your partner has in common, or your parent or your child, or whoever it is you're trying to have this relationship with, and sharing some activities, really important.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much, Lisa Firestone. And don't go away, because we'll be right back with reggae singer Rocky Dawuni. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. I'm with musician Rocky Dawuni, who was born in Accra, the capital of Ghana, and moved to the eastern part of the country for his schooling. Then he continued at the University of Ghana. Were you all over the country and going to school in different places, and what was that?
Well, what happened was that, I was born on a military barracks, so the military barracks is close to the capital, So after growing up there for the first 12 years of my life, my dad decided that since ancestrally I was from the northern part, he wanted me to go to school in the northern part so that I can get more of my
roots?
My roots.
But what's the difference between the northern and then you went to the eastern part, right?
Yeah, the eastern part where my dad moved later on, because my dad thought that when he was done with the army, he was going to move into the north. So he was like, okay, all the kids have to go there, get the education there, so that when he's done, he will be with us over there.
But he's not American.
No, he's not American.
Oh,
I see. I'm full-blooded Ghanaian.
Oh, you are. So it was military, Ghana military.
Yes.
And the military barracks. Oh,
yes.
I see.
Yes.
And the school was it just for military people?
The school on the barracks was for military people. What happened was that my dad was a cook for the generals.
Oh.
And this school, when it started, was supposed to be like a school for, the higher ranks of the army.
I see.
So my dad too, being interested in, he believed at an early age that, regardless of whatever we did in our lives, education was the best platform we could get.
Good for him.
So he pushed us to the schools that the generals' kids were attending.
Oh, that's why. What language was it in?
Ghana was a colony of the British, so the language of government and education was in English.
So you learned.
Yeah,
so
I learned like education. English was what we were all tutored in. But then apart from that too, we got the opportunity of learning the other tribal languages.
Oh, that's so. Where were the tribal languages taught? In the north or in the east, or walking in the streets, or what?
The cool thing about military barracks is that you are in this little enclosure.
You're closed off.
You're
yeah.
closed off. You're a child of a soldier, and you are subject to some of the military rules too. And then you find out that all the soldiers too come from different tribal backgrounds.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so you're with all the kids, and what happens is that everybody spoke almost like 5 languages at least.
Because you learned it from each other?
Yeah, and then when people find out that you can speak one, they always switch to the other one that you can speak. So you're always trying to learn more languages. So I grew up with at least about probably 6 tribal languages that I speak.
Oh, but
personally.
tribal languages, do they sound alike?
Some of them do. Like the Tree, which is the biggest language of Ghana.
Tree?
Yeah, it's called Tree, and it's the language of the Ashantis.
Right.
Ashanti, almost everybody in the southern part of the country speak that. And then you have like Fanti, which is kind of closely related to Tree. So if you can speak Tree, you can almost be able to speak
I see. So
Fanti.
I
but
see.
then the northern languages, and then there's Ewe, which is like close to Togolese, language, and those are totally different. Those are like night and day type languages. Yeah.
Did you always want to be a musician?
When I think back at it, it's always been like a part of me because, growing up, like the Ghanaian military was heavily involved in politics because they were in power at that time.
I see.
So when I was growing up, there was all these changes. You kind of heard political thought and political discussion all around. And I felt that, from an early age that I had something to say in terms of my perspective and how I felt things should be.
What you were watching, what you were experiencing.
What I was experiencing.
But you didn't know, but were you going to write it down?
I think at an early age, I was attracted to the whole concept of music as a vehicle of communication.
I see.
So when I started having these, shall I say, being attracted to these political thoughts, I realized that music will definitely be the vehicle to carry, across.
So that kind of was a plan. I mean, you kind of were thinking
I don't know whether it was a plan or I grew into that plan.
Oh, you grew into it. But were you playing a musical instrument, or were you musical at all?
I was musical, and I wanted to play a musical instrument, but then the thing is that music, when I was growing up, the environment in which I grew up, it was very hard to come by musical instruments.
Really?
We grew up very poor, and most of the time your parents, the priority is education before musical instruments.
But it sounds, when you listen to music from Africa, that they use all different kinds. Like you'll even hear 2 sticks, or you'll hear two spoons, or things like that.
The drums and stuff, those are just natural. Those are around.
Those are natural.
Yeah, but like getting into like modern instrumentation, like maybe guitars and real trap drums, that stuff I got exposed to it, later when I was in the university.
But so when the music, in your mind, came from, or whatever you were going to discuss, the political aspect, came from the north, from the east, came from kids you knew from all over the country.
Yeah.
So it was very influenced.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that, when you become when you're a musician, or you are somebody who try to use a certain medium to express your environment, you become like almost like a social sponge.
But you're called a reggae singer.
Yes.
But are you a reggae singer then? From listening to what you're saying? Maybe you're not really.
Well, the thing is that reggae was the first medium. Because when I wanted to be a musician, the first, the initial artist I was listening to was Bob Marley, and mostly like Jamaican music and then Afrobeat, because those were already tried and tested means of disseminating that same style, But first of all, I'm an African artist, and that is where I start from. So if even I do reggae, I interpret it in the spectacles of Africa.
I see. A different way.
A different way, different vibe.
They're
different
all
energy.
Different kinds. Different energy. They're all different kinds of music. You talk Afro funky?
Afrobeat.
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 What is it? Afro funk? Funk?
Afro funk. Afro funk is kind of like really traditional African music, fused with, the James Brown style, and that is kind of the basis of Afrobeat. Afrobeat is, traditional, it's like high life music mixed with, what's it called, real funky, gritty James Brown,
and then
style, yeah.
and soul.
And
soul thrown in.
Soul thrown in, and then reggae music. That's what I play. I call it Afro roots.
Oh, you call it Afro roots.
Afro
Okay,
roots,
so
yeah.
so everything you've talked about is put into your music.
It's put into in one organic, very accessible style, and I can trace it from just roots, like soul music, Afrobeat, and then reggae music. Yeah.
Do you perform on stage?
Yes. In Ghana, I have a yearly concert every Independence Day, which attracts about 30,000 people.
You live there, though.
Yeah.
You live in America, you live there.
Yeah.
How do you change back and forth? Are you keeping your Ghana ease, or becoming Americanized?
I call it shuffling of realities, And what happens is that, after school, I traveled, to come to the U.S. just because I wanted to really open my worldview, and also as a musician too, I was trying to really make my messages and more universal. So that required me leaving my comfortable environments of Africa and then coming to another environment where I can be able to see things from another dimension. So what it allows me to do is that I constantly interchange.
The two.
Yeah, the two, and eventually, sometimes a little bit, disorienting, but then I think eventually what it has made me is that I've become a much more rounded artist in terms of my vision,
Do you perform in America?
Yes.
So you perform on stage here?
Yes.
And you've performed for Black History Month, which is it just in the America?
Most of my concerts, in America, I've done a lot of the world music festival circuits and reggae festival circuit. I've done the WOMAD festival, and then me and Stevie Wonder too did a concert together in Ghana earlier last year.
Oh, he came to Ghana.
Yeah, he came to Ghana. Me and him did a show there, and then one of my concerts here in the U.S. too. He showed up and came up on stage with me, which was a very incredible moment. Yeah.
Yeah,
very,
and
very
what
incredible
about
moment, yeah.
Peter Gabriel?
Yeah, Peter Gabriel, I came on stage with me during the recent Reebok Humanitarian Awards at the Royce Hall.
Oh, right here at UCLA?
UCLA, yeah. I was the musical personality for the night. So, the last song, it was such an incredible thing that, almost like a lot of the audience came on stage and joined me, and then he came up on stage too, and then I had the opportunity of, singing, sharing the mic with him.
Do you write your own music?
Yes.
All of it?
Yes. For me.
And how many are with you when you sing? Just yourself?
Oh, I have my band is about a 10-piece.
Oh, it is?
Yeah, 10-piece band, yeah.
Does it have a name, or does your group have a name?
It's Rocky Dawuni and then the Revelation Project. It's kind of like an African town council meeting type.
Rocky Dawuni and what?
And the Revelation Project.
Oh,
yeah.
But you brought a drum that's so beautiful. Can I see it?
Yeah, it's a talking drum, It's
it's heavy, too.
Yeah, it is, yeah. In West Africa, talking drum is it's used as a communication tool.
That's what it is. It's like the Lion King, where they talk.
Yeah, they talk. Yeah, So drums are traditionally have been used to communicate, and then this became in popular music. Now, this was used. It's all animal.
It smells like an animal.
Did
you make it?
No, there's experts who make drum makers. So anytime
because there's a hard thing underneath it, and then what?
That is like a piece. That's just a wooden part, and then it's a hollow piece, and then these are strips of leather, and then that's also this is an alligator skin actually.
Oh, really? It's so smooth.
Yeah, really delicate.
So what? So, do you play this on stage, or does your band just play?
I play. One of the things that I sing, and then I play talking drums. And then,
do you sing or talk? Is your music singing or talking?
It's just emotional singing, and it's singing from the heart. It's just the spirit. Yeah, that's what I do.
Can you beat this drum for us? That's your little
put
strap.
It right there,
yeah.
And then you hold that, and then you have.
Oh, you have a. Are you making the noise by moving your arms in and
You know,
out?
you're squeezing the leather, you put in tension and releases onto the leather, and then that creates like the different tones.
And
that
what
you-
is this beat?
Yeah.
Beater.
Yeah, that's the stick, the talking stick. Yeah.
This is the talking stick?
Well, yeah. So you use a talking stick with a talking drum. Yeah.
Because so much of the African beat, you hear people talking to each other and answering.
Yeah, yeah. Well, African music is call and response, you know, because.
Oh, is that how you say it?
Yeah, and then the music came out of also, the music is about community, you know, so it's, you know, but then what we see mostly in the modern times is that we see much more the entertainment aspect of it.
Yeah.
But it grew out of a sense of community, and the music is always to bring people together, you know, so you always find the communication there. Somebody makes a statement and then there's a response. So there's a lot of call and response.
Yes,
in
and then a
African
lot
music.
of beats in
Yeah, a
between.
lot of beats, beats in between, you know.
Well,
the
are they
drums, yeah.
dancing in between, or are they
yeah.
just sitting in there?
Well, you know, it depends on what context you are. There's certain places where, you know, the music, it's, you know, there's the drumming, and then there's the dancing. The dancing is the personal expression of the sounds of the drums, you know, and then, you know, and then certain forums too, it's much more communication where you have different drummers. You know, you have the big drums, and then you have the master drums, you know, that communicate. So there's the big ones that talk to each other, and then there's the lead one, usually a talking drummer, you know, or there's one, two.
Is a talking drummer small like this?
Yeah,
it's always small.
There is about probably every country. Like in Ghana, this is actually a Nigerian talking drum. In Ghana, there's a bigger one. It's the same style, but a bigger one.
I see.
And then in Senegal,
is it stronger? Is that why it's bigger? Bigger voice?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you know, it's like big and controlling.
And Senegal?
And Senegal, there's a smaller one, the tama, you know, which is much more, it's faster. And it's played with, you know, they usually use their fingers. So the accents are much more, you know, faster than these ones. These ones are a little bit kind of slower, you know. So it reflects the cultural diversity in the different parts of Africa, you know. That's what, you know, the music. And I also, you know, in terms of what I do is that, you know, my music seeks to bring that aspect of Africa into my audience and all the people that I play to. You
Rocky,
know,
that is so great.
Thank you
You've
very
been
much,
so interesting today. Thank you very much.
Thank
and I'm
you.
glad you brought this stuff, and I'm glad that you watched us today. Thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles, and we'll see you next time. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, 90017. So great.